Hi, this is Pat Zaby, and it's wonderful to be here with David Knox on Real Estate Live just to share some ideas with you. And you know, in today's market, it's totally different than it was just a couple of years ago. A few years ago, you could take anybody to the mortgage company, and if they could fog a mirror, they could get qualified. But that's not the way it is right now. Financing can be our biggest stumbling block. You know, according to the latest NAR member profile, consumers' difficulty in securing mortgage financing is the root problem in getting transactions to the closing table. Now, lots of other studies have come in and substantiated that one thing. But what I want to point out to you is a study that I recommend you look at every single year. It's one of your member benefits from the National Association of Realtors. So go to Realtor.org and download the profile of home buyers and sellers. And currently, it's absolutely free for you. Don't print it immediately. It's 130 pages. But look at some of the stuff that's in there. And the one thing that I want to point out to you is this one question, which was, what do buyers want from their agents? Now, most real estate agents take a look at that big piece of the pie and they see that area where it says, help us find the right home to purchase. And you're probably pretty good at that, but so are the other 1.1 million realtors that are out there. I want you to focus on that other side of the pie. Look at those things that are called help buyers negotiate the terms of the sale, help with price negotiations, paperwork, comparables, qualifying buyers, and financing. Those things are really quite similar. In fact, if you were to put them all together, the situation is they have something similar we could call financial advice and negotiations. And that piece of the pie is actually larger than finding the right home. If you notice from this survey, it actually has grown by 2 percentage points in the last year. And the other neat thing about it is the fact that this is something that the buyers want, but they're not currently getting from agents. If you want to find a niche in the marketplace, something that's not being served right now, learn about financial advice. It'll make all the difference in your sales. One more thing that we ought to look at is the Housing Affordability Index. I don't know how you feel about it, but personally, I think we are in the best buyer's market that we will ever see in our entire lifetime. It's made up from a combination of different things. One of the things is the fact that prices have come down in the last couple of years. The values are actually very good. Interest rates are at a historic low, and buyers actually have a selection of homes they can choose from instead of feeling like they're forced to buy one particular house. Now, since NAR has been tracking this thing they call the Housing Affordability Index, which was back in the 70s, it's actually made up of two components: price and the interest rates. The fact that prices have come down in the last 2 years and the fact that interest rates have not been this low, mortgage rates have not been this low for 50 years, this makes it a great time to buy. In fact, they consider any time the index is pegged at 100, it's a good time to buy. Currently, it is at its all-time high, 170. So we're in the best buyer's market ever, and yet there are buyers sitting on the fence. Can you imagine what's causing them to sit there? I mean, I personally don't understand why they're sitting there. I think they need some help getting off the fence. You know, they know all of the emotional reasons for buying a house. Let's face it, pride of ownership, a place to own, a place to raise their family, to share with their friends, a place to feel safe and secure. They don't need any help with that sort of stuff, but they do need help right now in justifying those reasons. And I think that's where a rent versus own comes into play. And what I'd like to show you is a rent versus own that we use on our residential finance consultant website. It starts out with some simple basic entry here. What we need to do is ask the person what price home they think they would like to buy. Plug that in. And then we have to agree on an appreciation rate. Now, we obviously want to use something that is very conservative. We don't want to do anything to destroy our credibility early in this game. So I'm going to use something in this range of 1%. We also introduce the concept of maintenance because, let's face it, if a person owns a home rather than renting, they have to pay maintenance, and so that's a real cost for them. We also would enter basic information on the mortgage financing, whatever the current rate is and that sort of thing, property taxes and what have you, but I need to know what is their tax bracket. So I'm just going to ask them, do you know what tax bracket you're in? Well, since we're using a $175,000 price range here, this person would probably be in the 25% tax bracket. and then I need to know what kind of rent are you currently paying. Once they give me that information, I don't have to know anything about math. I don't have to know anything about calculators or anything else. This form just spits out the answers for me. And what happens here is basically their house payment is $1,200 a month, which would be everything: principal, interest, taxes, insurance. But their net cost of owning, after we take into consideration tax savings, appreciation, and principal reduction, even if we add the maintenance back into it, is almost half of that amount. So if we need to show a person exactly where that comes from, we can show them your house payment is this, then you take away the tax savings, the appreciation, the principal reduction. Even if we add back in the maintenance, your net cost of housing is almost 50% of what the house payment is. We want to let that set in because we don't want to give them too much information at one time. I have a big belief that a confused mind never makes a decision. So our job is to ease the confusion, not add to it. Once we get past that, I want to go to this next point where I talk to them about the fact that, you're currently paying $1,400 in rent. Do you realize you're paying almost $700 more to rent the home than to own the home? And in a year's time, that's $8,000 you're losing by renting rather than owning. Again, I want that to have effect, so I'm not going to push it too fast. But after that, what I want to do is talk to them about the effect of leverage. Now, this is very important for them. Leverage is the ability to use borrowed funds to control a bigger asset. Well, we can take your down payment of $6,125, and in a 7-year period of time, it will grow in equity to $37,000. That's 6 times its initial amount. Well, where does that come from? Well, part of it comes from appreciation, but remember, we only used 1% appreciation on this example. The majority of this example comes from amortization. A portion of the payment each and every month goes to reduce the principal. This is like a forced savings account. It's a fantastic thing. And then another thing we need to point out to this renter is the simple fact that as they're paying rent over and over and over again, it's accumulating to a lot of lost money. In this example, this person's going to lose $168,000 over a 7-year period of time. My gosh, that's a lot of money. We have an expression that we like to use a lot. Whether you rent or you buy, you pay for the house you occupy. Now, that's pretty impressive right there, but we're not finished with them yet. Now let's increase the appreciation from 1% to something that may be more realistic. 3%. Now you'd have to use the right number for your marketplace, but I still feel conservative with 3%. Then what happens is the tax saving stays the same, but the appreciation goes up. Principal reduction stays the same. Monthly maintenance stays the same. But as you can see, the net cost of housing now is $416, which is about a third of what the house payment is. Then when we go to show them the difference in rent, they're paying $1,400 in rent, but they're now losing, it costs them $983 more to rent than to own, which is almost $12,000 a year. Can you really afford to lose $12,000 a year? Then when we go to the last thing, which is the effect of leverage, we go in here and show them that the $6,000 down payment that they originally had grows to almost $65,000 in the 7-year period of time, almost 10 times their initial investment. My belief is simply this: there is never going to be a better time to buy a home than right now. With the combination of the prices being reduced, the values being good, the interest rates being lower than they've been in 50 years, and the selection great, if a person can afford to buy a home right now, they need to buy it. In fact, I'm going to take it one step further and make it your responsibility to be able to convince them to buy a house in today's market. Because if you've got a buyer's rep agreement with them, it is your fiduciary responsibility to make them understand. This market is something that they need to take advantage of. We don't want to go back and look back at this particular time and say, ooh, I should have bought a house back then. What we need to be saying is, I was so fortunate to buy a house back then. Financing can be your distinct point of difference. You know, a lot of times people are asked, what do you do? And they say, oh, I'm a realtor, or I'm a salesperson, or I help people's dreams come true. Well, I think what you can do is use financing as your point of difference. And what you should be saying is this: I help people understand the tax advantages, financing alternatives, and investment aspects of home ownership, and why now is an incredible time to buy. And I believe it from the bottom of my heart. I can't remember who said it, but I'm going to give credit to Zig Ziglar because he said so many good things. More people will be convinced by the height of your enthusiasm than will ever be convinced by the depth of your logic. When you truly believe something from the bottom of your heart, it's easy to get passionate about it. I think you need to be passionate about the fact that right now is a fantastic time to buy a home. And part of the reason is because of financing. You need to learn the ins and outs of financing so you can explain it. Back in the 80s, when interest rates were at 18% for FHA, we had to learn financing techniques and creative financing techniques in order to sell property. Today, it's a little bit different reason why we're doing it. We have low interest rates, but people aren't coming off the fence. They need to understand that financing is a huge contribution to their cost of housing. And financing will make the difference, not only for your buyers, but for your income also. I'm Pat Zaby, and I want to thank you for joining me here on Real Estate Live.